folks, I'm Bonecrusher. I'm here with another Modern Jund video. The last one I posted was probably about a month ago or so, and since then, this is what we're looking at here. Made some changes, took out some cards that kind of were underperforming, cards that were all good, but just maybe not suited specifically for this metagame we're in. And we're trying out some new things here. I got really into Bonecrusher Giant because I was playing Pioneer, and it was really good there. It's really good in Historic. It's just a phenomenal card, and I think it's going to be pretty well suited to this format because, as it is right now, there are a lot of cheap creatures, Ragavans, Dragon's Rage Channelers, the cheap white creature decks, lots of stuff that can get hit by Stomp, and then Bonecrusher Giant is pretty good later on. What I talked about in my blog a while ago, that Ignoble Hierarch excels when you have cards that have like variable mana costs. So when you have a whole bunch of mana, then Bonecrusher Giant is great because you get to cast Stomp and Giant in the same turn, or the fact that it's a 5 mana total card doesn't hurt you as much. But also, when you are mana light and you're in a resource battle, then you're able to get 2 cards out of 1, and they're both pretty good and pretty cheap. So Bonecrusher Giant, pretty excited about it. I'm trying to make the deck a little bit more tuned to fight Murktide Regent. It's funny, right, because it's just a creature, but a lot of the more recent cards that this kind of deck's been playing are not that great against a big Murktide Regent. So, you know, you would assume that just like, oh, a big creature, you know, we can just kill a big creature, but it happens to like dodge a lot of the removal that Jund decks play. So to try to get around that, I'm playing Bloodchief's Thirst over Fatal Push. I'm playing Dreadbore over Abrupt Decay. Terminate or Assassin's Trophy would also work. I like the flexibility of Dreadbore a little bit more than those cards, or than Terminate, and I just kind of not really an Assassin's Trophy fan. I'm playing 1 Maelstrom Pulse, whereas normally you would see both Golgon's commands here. And then 4 copies of Liliana in the Veil. And then in our threats here, we got Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom pretty nicely can shut down at least 1 Murktide Regent. And it has, you know, plenty of other applications. It's a card that I like a lot and probably sees less play than it should, but also I play it more than I should. I don't know, one of those things. Still got a couple Ragavans, a couple Ren 6, the 4 Ignoble Hierarchs. For the sideboard, we are trying out Alpine Moon. Seems like a pretty nice catch-all against a lot of the big mana decks, Tron, Valakut, stuff like that, and it also stops Urza's Saga. Cleansing Wildfire also stops Urza's Saga. Crime Punishment stops Urza's Saga, and is a nice, like, almost like a Wrath card, like a good Engineered Explosives card. We've got 3 copies of Leyline of the Void, which is kind of nice to have. Just like I don't know, something about playing Leyline of the Void just makes you feel pretty safe, you know? Just really the hard, fast, just no frills graveyard hate card. And then just a couple of Huntmasters to round things out, an Ancient Grudge, Damping Spears. I'm also playing 1 copy of Gaia's Blessing. The blue-black mill deck is pretty popular in Modern, and it's actually pretty good. We're able to get on the board pretty fast, and we have lots of removals for Ruin Crabs, and it's kind of a good matchup, but just by having 1 copy of Gaia's Blessing in your 75 is going to make that matchup much, much better. So I really like having cards where they're good even if you don't draw them. I remember a long time ago when the Lantern of Insight deck was really popular, playing Ancient Grudge was really good because they would mill it over and then you just have this free copy of Ancient Grudge in your graveyard that you could cast, and so it became a lot harder for them to win just by you having it in your deck at all. And so when there are cards like that where you don't even have to draw them, they're just good no matter what, just because of whatever it is the opponent's got going on. And it's always these kind of like weird weird decks that have this application, but I try to take that opportunity when I get the chance. One other quick thing is the mana base. I was complaining last time because Renin 6 was tougher to cast, and it just kind of wasn't feeling that good for the mana. So we've got a Lair of the Hydra in here, and I cut a Swamp. I went up on a Blackleaf Cliffs, just messing around with the numbers a little bit, but I do really like Lair of the Hydra. It is not as powerful, I guess, as Raging Ravine, but the fact that it comes into play on tap is kind of important. The same is true with Castle Locklane. And this is a very tempo-oriented format, and so lands that enter the battlefield tapped are pretty bad for you. So I like the addition of Lair. It gives you a little bit of inevitability and doesn't usually slow down your mana development. Alright, so I played this deck through a league, and let's check out the matches. Alright, so here we are for the first match on the play. This hand is a little sketchy, but I like keeping this. We've got our mana set, and we've got time to draw something that's useful, because we got 2 removal spells, so if we're getting run over by a creature deck, then we should be okay. At least for a little while until we start to draw something. So 2 removal spells, no Ignoble Hierarch. Pretty good hand to have against Plains, Ether Vial. Tarmogoyf a great draw, of course. Some thought to leaving the Hierarch back to hold up Bolt mana, but I don't know. With Plains Vial, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of a deal. So another Goyf, just running perfect here. So we'll deploy second Goyf. They're going to Vial in a Giver of Runes. So the opponent plays a Field of Ruin here. Makes me kind of think that on turn 2, when I fetched a Mountain, it might have been the wrong thing to do. That is because these mono-white Taxes decks can kind of run you out of basics between Path to Exile and Field of Ruin. And so now, having fetched the Mountain and then fetching the Forest, I've only got 1 more basic land in my deck. So Field of Ruin turns into like a really good Wasteland, and Path to Exile turns into Sword Splashers after one of them gets used here. So that's something you're supposed to look out for when you're playing this match, which is tough because it's also like, well, I really want to get a basic here sometimes because I'm worried about my life total. And the thing is that it seems like in this matchup, traction is more important than your actual life total. Like, you can kind of throw away some life points if you really need to. As long as you're able to keep things like Thalia off the board, it's okay to be at a little bit of a low life total, but I think my opponent maybe messed that up. Not exactly sure what they were trying to do. Here's Bonecrusher Giant though, looking pretty good. Alright, so we got that one. I gotta say, like, we just drew super hot the whole game. Kept a sketcher, but, I mean, clearly it worked out, but I do like keeping a hand like that. I mean, you've got your lands, and so it gives you the opportunity to, like, kind of, get lucky. If you mulligan and then you have a 6-card hand and you're like down on resources and maybe your mana's a little sketchy and you're like getting into top deck mode later on, but you don't get to cast the stuff that you top deck. I don't know. I like the security of having your mana set up. Your hierarch is there so that if you draw something, you're good to go. You're able to deploy it fast. And we had a couple of removal spells. Like, it was very threat light, but we were able to take it down. And the other thing is that, like, drawing consecutive Tarmogoyfs, of course, that was like the best thing we could draw on turn 2 there. But like, had they been Scavenging Muses, would the opponent have won? Probably not. How about like Liliana or Ren and 6 or even Ragavan? Like, a lot of our cards are just like knockouts. For those first few draw steps there. So it's not that we, Tarmogoyf, maybe you could make an argument that Tarmogoyf wasn't even the best thing to draw. But just drawing something was what we needed with that hand. So this is a hand where it looks really good. We have Inquisition, Tarmogoyf, and Liliana the Veil. Even though it doesn't have red mana, like, I think you got to keep this one. Tarmogoyfs are just really good in this matchup. It forces them to play Path to Exile on it because it's just too big, and that's what you want to have happen. Like, you want to get your stuff Path to Exile so that you can deploy your stuff faster. And their whole game plan is playing cards that are going to like slow you down, even though the cards that they're playing they don't have, Thalia, Giver of Runes. These cards don't have a lot of power and toughness, but they slow your opponent down. So when they are forced to like speed you back up, then you just get to play more powerful stuff than them. So I want to get this Tarmogoyf Path to Exile. The opponent here has Giver of Runes and Thalia, and now Phyrexian Revoker. The Revoker is looking pretty good because I was planning on using this Liliana at some point. So got choices here. I think the thing to do, I think what I end up doing, is just casting Dreadbore on the Giver of Runes. Dreadbore is, interestingly enough, like in this kind of matchup, all their stuff has low toughness. So the Bonecrusher Giant is pretty much just as good, like the Stomp, pretty much just as good of a removal spell as Dreadbore is, except it's instant speed. And I know I want to do this because I don't want to wait until my opponent's turn, because then they can, like, I don't know. There's just more stuff that could go wrong, I guess. You wait till your opponent's turn there. I'm not sure about this play that I end up making here. It's tough. If you play the Wrenn and 6, then they're going to path the Tarmogoyf and attack you. So you know, and attack the Wrenn and 6. I think maybe that was the thing to do. Play Wrenn and 6, hit the Revoker, then they path the Tarmogoyf, attack the Wrenn and 6 with Thalia, and then I get to untap with a bunch of mana here. Instead they just play Flicker Wisp and try to get in for a whole bunch of damage, which is kind of a good play. Now we're racing. So what's nice about Flicker Wisp is that it just kind of does a lot for you, you know. As far as, like, it's got all these little tricks you can do with it, but it's also just like, oh, okay, now we're racing, you know. You remove the blocker, gets an attack in, and now it's a big flying creature in the air. Again, it's a tough spot. Like, what do you hit? The Thalia is kind of not that important anymore. The Flicker Wisp is really dangerous, but because we know they have Path, we know that the Wrenn and 6 can get attacked if they want it to. So this play at least gets rid of the Revoker and opens up Liliana for later. Forces them to do something about this Tarmogoyf if they want to, like, attack and get some traction. So this is another, like, having the second Flicker Wisp, now we're in a damage, well, not a damage race, because we're not racing them very, very effectively here. But we got to be concerned about the amount of damage we're getting dealt, that's for sure. And that Path is still in their hand, so can't really block these Flicker Wisps, and can't depend on being able to block the Thalia anyway. What we can do is play two creatures here, because we drew a Tarmogoyf, and put them to the test a little bit. So there's a lot of damage coming through. In hindsight, I'm not 100% sure what the right play for our opponent is. Like, if they're supposed to block or not. They ended up blocking. It's working out pretty good. The lightning bolt was a great draw. Bolt the Flicker Wisp after it attacks the Liliana. We've got them kind of in chump block mode. Not really even, though. They only go to 1 here. I don't know, we'd be dead to like Maul of the Skyclades or something. This is another game where we drew really well, but post sideboard, you're pretty much always going to draw really well in a matchup like this. Your deck gets a lot more, like a lot more sleek and more able to keep up with the opponent. You don't have to have tons more card advantage than your opponent does. You just need to have a little bit more card advantage than your opponent does. And so you take out stuff that doesn't really affect the board that much or is too slow. And so it looks like we drew like super duper well here or whatever, but this is kind of what happens when you put stuff like Bonecrusher Giant and Planeswalkers that remove opposing creatures in your deck, you know. We're getting multiple cards out of a single card, and those cards that we are playing are pretty cheap. So we get to play, you know, this ground game with the opponent and come out on top, because even though like we drew, like, look at how many lands we have in play here, and normally you would look at this and be like, okay, my opponent played all of these spells and only drew these lands, and it was just like, man, they just had so much gas, I just couldn't do anything. But in reality, like, to be fair, they almost got us there with those Flicker Wisps, and we had to have that extra removal spell, but just the fact that we're able to get a lot of cards out of a single card based on not just like the Bonecrusher Giant, the Lilies, the Wrenn and 6, but like that we were able to pressure their life total and force them to chump block, stuff like that adds up as well. So, yep, that's like, it's not a great, I mean, it's a good matchup, but it's not like an auto win or anything when you play against these mono white or like white black kind of Taxes decks. Your cheap removal spells are able to slow them down enough so that their little incidental disruption stuff doesn't really affect you that much. So, and Tarmogoyf just too big. All right, let's go to match 2. All right, second match. Thoughtseize, Tarmogoyf, Liliana, removal spell, best hand ever. Opponent mulligans to 6, so Thoughtseize looks even better. Liliana looks even better. Looking at this hand and being like, ah, man, I probably got to get a Blood Crypt and go down to 15, or maybe I'm supposed to play a Swamp, but then if I draw Wrenn and 6, it'll be pretty bad. And then the opponent plays Seachrome Coast, Lotus Bloom, so it's like, okay, that doesn't matter anymore. So this is a hand where I have no idea what to take. I haven't played against ad nauseum for years, but I had to Google what a more recent ad nauseum deck looks like. I went with the Phyrexian Unlife here. I think it's probably the best thing to take because the other cards are things that they're going to have to spend mana on to find more combo pieces. Like, ideally for them, they'll have Angel's Grace instead of Phyrexian Unlife, but I think Phyrexian Unlife is the best card to take here. Having said that, maybe I'm wrong. You know, we have the Pulse that can take care of a Phyrexian Unlife if it were to hit the table. So I'm not really sure, but with them missing land drops, it's looking really good. We get to play a Liliana onto a board with just one land for the opponent. Play the Liliana before attacking, of course. That way, when a new, changes what they want to discard sometimes. Or, rather, gets your Tarmogoyf in for more damage if they discard a card type that isn't already in graveyards. Use a Lotus Bloom. Feeling pretty safe, though, because there's nothing that, they can do with that hand. Their best thing that they could do costs 6 mana, and Swimming Spirit Guy's banned, so with just 5 mana available to them, it's not the hugest deal. So we're going to make them discard first, then Pulse the Lotus Bloom. Do it this order because they, don't have all the information with which to discard. So now it's they discarded the Stasis Oracle. Maybe if they had known that the Lotus Bloom wasn't going to stick around, they would have discarded something different. Who knows? I think it's Spoils of Vault in response. And conceded to the Ignoble Hierarch because that 1 extra damage was going to be enough. I don't know, that's really it. But looking at the sideboard, trying to figure out what to board in. The Ancient Grudge is good, but not really 100% sure what else is good. Plenty of stuff is bad, though. I don't mind Huntmaster in a matchup like this. You need something for a threat. Tarmogoyf's clearly the best thing, but in this list as I have it built, we've got Tarmogoyf, Ragavan. Bonecrusher Giant is actually pretty nice here as compared to some other 3-drops or whatever for that kind of slot, doing that kind of job in this matchup. But the ability to put pressure on is pretty critical here, so I don't mind playing Huntmaster. Let's see if Past Griffin brought it in or not. Okay, so I brought in 1 Huntmaster. Deceptively a lot of damage. You play it on turn 4 or whatever, and imagine you've been using disruption spells, maybe you destroyed an artifact or made them discard a couple of cards, and then if you get to untap, then you're dealing a whole bunch of damage. Basically attacks for 8 on the first turn that it attacks. So that's important because lots of times in this matchup you're needing to deal 30 to them because of Phyrexian Unlife. So the opponent mulliganed to 5 and played Leyline of Sanctity on turn 1, and that's something you're going to see a lot with John when you play against combo decks. players that mulligan to try to find Leyline of Sanctity to play around your discard spells. And, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, but you also can kind of get punished when you do that because you are mulliganing even more than normal, you know? Because the Leyline of Sanctity itself is a card that that isn't a combo piece and is in your hand. But it's probably better than mulliganing to 5 and then getting Inquisition to Thoughtseize a million times. So. However, we have a really good draw with Ragavan into Liliana being just about the best thing. Just about the best thing we could have. Ragavan looks really good against decks that are not prepared to beat it. Just because it's a clock that adds mana. Like, honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot. I really think that they have to, like, they don't have to and they're not going to. But if you look at Ragavan versus Deathrite Shaman, like, I think Ragavan is just a better card. And I feel like Deathrite Shaman could be unbanned in this format. I think Ragavan is just super good. And, like, if we're letting Ragavan around, then whatever. But, anyway. What happened there, anyway? Opponent conceded. We had Tarmogoyf, Liliana taken up. They didn't have a lot going on. They'd mulliganed a million times. So. Yeah. So we beat an aggro deck, we beat a combo deck. Okay, round 3. Lurrus revealed from the opponent. Here's a hand that we could just lose pretty easily, but one fetch land in our mana is like totally fine, so I don't know. I kept it. It was pretty sketchy, but there's a lot of upside to it. I also just don't like mulliganing. I don't mind keeping some sketchy hands from time to time. Through Forest. I wouldn't say that was the worst land we could draw. No, it probably was the worst land we could draw. I'm going to play Sleight of Hand. And does not play a land. So we got two decks that are kind of limping along here. Sleight of Hand whiff again. You hate to see it. So it's looking pretty bad for us here. That looked like some kind of counterspell that they might have had in hand. I'm not really sure what's going on. But they don't have anything for the Tarmogoyf, so they're going to have to at some point. So there's the Drown in the Luck for the Tarmogoyf. think we've drawn, like, I think our last 3 draw steps were black spells or something. Can't keep a 1-lander and then complain. And gotta say, we're doing better so far in this game than you would think. You're like, oh yeah, the only land you're going to draw till turn 7 is 1 copy of Forest. And we're doing fine if that's the case, but Overgrown Tomb off the top, gotta love it. I like playing Bitter Blossom here, even though they're at 4, you know, and Bonecrusher Giant's lethal. I like the idea of using the black mana when we get a chance. Next turn, any land turns into Inquisition plus Bonecrusher, whereas, oh, I guess not Black Leaf Glyphs, but whereas if we had played Bonecrusher Giant, next turn we drew another land. If it doesn't add black, then we're still going to just play 1 spell. Plus, like, Bitter Blossom is just a card that's, like, always going to be better the earlier you play it. For sideboarding here, I decided to, like, I don't have a great idea of what our opponent's doing. It could be, like, Death Shadow. It could be, like, Murktide Regent. It could just be Grixis Control. But outside of, like, there's not a ton in the sideboard that looks really that appealing for us. Anyway, as I have it built right now, this is one of the downsides of playing Leyline of the Void over Go Blank, where Go Blank would be really good. Right now, like, if I had seen Murktide Regent and DRC, then maybe I would be bringing in the ley lines, but as it stands, I don't think I want them yet. In a mid-range mirror or control game or whatever, where the number of cards you have is going to be important, I don't mind trimming a couple of Noble Hierarchs. It's going to help you not get flooded. And I brought in the Huntmasters. They're just, in a matchup like this, just like a really big punch in the gut. Another 1-lander. It worked well last time. But on the draw, it's pretty acceptable. I was on the draw last time too, but we have Bitter Blossom, which they just folded to last time, and Thoughtseize to protect it. Kind of can't get too much better than that. So Blood Crypt into Dragon's Rage Channeler, that's stuff that we hadn't seen last time. So I could have played Thoughtseize, but I went with Ragavan instead. And the reason is that when they play Dragon's Rage Channeler, I want to, like, they're on the board already, and I need to try to make up tempo. And our 1-mana Ragavan traded with their 2-mana Drown in the Loch there, which is really nice. It's really good for us. It's not always going to happen like that. I mean, you know, a Fatal Push or whatever would be pretty bad for us. But Thoughtseize doesn't trade with anything. Like, casting Thoughtseize is always mana, like, negative in a deck like our opponents, where all their stuff is really cheap. So by leading with the Ragavan, trading with a 2-mana spell, we're kind of in a better position here to play a little tempo game. Red and 6 was a great top deck, and we get the land out of it. So now we're, like, cruising, making our land drops. Killed the Dragon's Rage Channeler. They didn't have the answer for it. You know, between Bolt, Unholy Heat, whatever, plenty of stuff they could have had there. We get to Thoughtseize, which they countered, which is pretty crazy. What makes me think that they probably have... Well, no. It didn't actually make me think that they had Snapcaster Mage, because I should have known that they had Snapcaster Mage. But I was just like, oh, well, whatever. As we'll see, I'm going to make some really just Galaxy Brain moves here. when you've got Bitter Blossom in play, incidental life gain becomes really good for you, and incidental life loss becomes really bad for you. So I'm definitely trying to, I'd love to get Huntmaster into play here. It would be amazing to be at 14 instead of 12. And then definitely want to, I've got 3 basics in play already. Don't want to waste any more life points than I can afford. So the opponent had Snapcaster Mage for Drown in the Lock, which I probably should have known because they didn't want to let my Thoughtseize resolve, and they played Steam Vents untapped on their turn. So I should have not cast the Huntmaster. Probably should have played something along the lines of Tarmogoyf, then not tick up the Wrenn and 6, then minus the Wrenn and 6 on the Snapcaster. Or maybe even like minus the Wrenn and 6 on the Snapcaster, play the other. No, I guess I wouldn't have had the mana for that, but. So this is what's nice about Bitter Blossom, though. It just so happens to be like really good against Snapcaster Mage and 1 toughness creatures. They're going upstairs because they know that like the Bitter Blossom is going to take over. The way for them to win this game is to try to punk me out. With burn spells, which does happen. I mean, you wouldn't think like in a control matchup like losing a little bit of life isn't that important. It is pretty important when the opponent plays Bolt Snapcaster Mage and Cool. Yeah. So here's a really, really good Engineered Explosives. It's kind of a shame. I think we're at max Goyf if Goyf was still alive. I think Goyf would be 8-9. Tribal Enchantment, Artifact, Planeswalker, Instant Sorcery, Creature Land. See if we can beat him down with the leftovers here. Their deck also is not great at preventing themselves from taking some incidental life points, some incidental damage. Another Snapcaster. So between the Bonecrusher Giant just being like hard to deal with threat and the Lair of the Hydra just sitting there being like an actual like a threat like it's threatening to attack, they're in a lot of trouble here. And another Bonecrusher Giant is just like such a huge tempo play. Gets their blocker off the table, puts another creature on the board that's also a lethal attacker, and like, hard to hit with spot removal. I think that's another thing about Bonecrusher Giant specifically for Modern that is underrated, is that like the game plan of just like turn 2 stomp you, turn 3 Bonecrusher, and just try to get you dead. Like that's like something you have to do in Historic every once in a while, and it works kind of well because there are a lot of shock lands in Historic. The same is true in Modern. Like I don't think that Bonecrusher Giant. I mean, clearly in Legacy, like how good a card has to be to make it into the format goes up or whatever. But like that concept of like this little chip damage is enough to like put enough pressure on you to swing a game. You can do that with the Bonecrusher Giant because most of these decks start at like 14 life between Shocklands and Thought Seizes and just like other stuff. So, you know, and Fetchlands. You see that in Historic. Lots of people play Thoughtseize, lots of people play Shocklands, and more so than in Modern. But in Legacy, like, you have to plan on dealing all 20, and in Modern you really only have to deal like 15. So what's nice about Bonecrusher Giant is that it just gets through. Like, it's not usually going to win a game by itself, but it can put on enough pressure because the opponents are starting at a lower life total. And the ability to deal 2 damage to the opponent when they use a removal spell on it, that becomes a lot more powerful when the opponent's starting at a lower life total. So in this matchup, a matchup where it's like, well, it's not that good of a creature, it doesn't really get you that much of a 2-for-1, because if it's hitting anything, it's probably a Snapcaster Mage, and it's just kind of a mopey little dude. Turns out, just like, it's just enough pressure to swing a match sometimes. So let's go to the next round. Okay, round number 4. Looking at a hand that has a little bit of an awkward mana situation. I want to cast Thoughtseize on turn 1. I want to cast Tarmogoyf on turn 2. The problem is, what do you get with this Verdant Catacombs in order to do that? And I think it's important enough to cast the Tarmogoyf on turn 2 that I will go, like, put myself down to 15 and forego getting red mana in order to do it. Of course, then you see a bunch of red cards and you're like, oh no. But the Tarmogoyf is going to be pretty good here. This is like I don't know. It's like not a super common deck. It's very budget, but it's capable of winning games for sure. This mono red, like, super cheap goblins deck. We've got Goblin Guide, Foundry Zenizen. I think it's got Mod Fanatics and Fanatical Firebrands, and then it's usually got bolts and goblin grenades. I don't know about what else, but here, like, we get to play the Tarmogoyf with impunity because the bolt isn't going to be that dangerous for us. Because if they try to bolt the Tarmogoyf and use a Mog Fanatic or something like that, it still won't kill the Tarmogoyf. We get to trade with Foundry Street Denizen instead. So they've got a Mog Fanatic over there. And Liliana minus doesn't look very good because then they just trade Mog Fanatic for Liliana. So what do we do? Lightning Bolt and Goblin Grenade. I think the Bolt, because I'm planning on making it so they don't have goblins for the rest of the game. And don't have an opportunity to use the Goblin Grenade. I feel like we're in a good spot here, but it's a little sketchy. Also, I make a play here that I kind of regret later. So I've got this Liliana, and I want to start ticking it up, right? I got a Lightning Bolt in my hand. It's possible that one play I could have made was just discarding Bloodstained Mire to Liliana. Another thing would have been just discarding the Lightning Bolt and playing the land tapped, and getting like a I don't know, a Stomping Ground instead of a Mountain. I was worried about my life total, of course. But Mountain to utilize the bolt upstairs, like, doesn't seem like it's that good. Anyway, we drew Tarmogoyf, so we're doing fine. But here, I'd be able to, like, really, of course, they can see now, but if I had more green mana, I'd be able to, like, really put that game out of reach. Carbon Punishment comes in because all this stuff is 1 mana creatures. Huntmaster comes in. Try and get rid of all the stuff that makes you lose life. I cut the Bitter Blossoms. You know, in hindsight, maybe I wasn't supposed to cut Bitter Blossoms. The one ones are just really good, but I don't know. Losing life's really bad in this matchup. This hand, too much stuff that costs too much mana. This is better. Mog Fanatic, not their scariest thing. I'm just gonna play the Ragavan. I want to save the Lightning Bolt for a Goblin Guide, I think. Now they use Claim the Firstborn, which is pretty good against Ragavan. It's like hitting a Tarmogoyf. That's awesome for them. But instead, they just didn't have another mana. So they have more Mog Fanatics. Okay. He maybe should have blocked. I'm not really sure. I guess on their side of the table, it's like, oh, I want to trade damage. I want to get in as much damage with these Mog-Fanatics as I can. I don't know. It's tough when they're on just one land. Could like Lightning Bolt here. Still kind of just want to save it. Also trying to maybe get some usage out of this Crime and Punishment. It's kind of one of those weird things where it's like the way that damage works here. I don't know, it's just kind of silly. Now they want to trade. Makes sense. So now Crime and Punishment doesn't look that great. Scavenging Ooze does, though. And I'm going to pay the 2 life to get another green source into play. Not too concerned about the life total. More concerned about just getting Scavenging Ooze to survive. So there's that Goblin Guide we were talking about. Saving the Lightning Bolt for. So, I think they had some kind of plan here, but it doesn't go very well. Because we still got the treasure token around. But, I mean, they gotta try and do something. You can't just, like, beat this Scavenging Ooze by just letting it sit around. So tried to make an attack, then hopefully I would screw up, but I didn't. Again, just the ability to get on the board quickly was really helpful there. And Tarmogoyf is just like, it just does a lot of work in these matchups, these creature matchups. It's just like so big. And if their plan is to just race you, like, Tarmogoyf and a bunch of trash is going to win a lot of the time. So, let's go on to round 5. All right, round 5 on the play. This is another thing that's really cool about Bonecrusher Giant. It's 2 cards in 1. Hands with it look so much better. I don't know that I would keep, I mean, maybe like Liliana in that spot, I would keep a hand of just like Noble Hierarch lands and 1 other card. But Bonecrusher Giant's really cool. That said, here's the Yawgmoth deck, and I don't really know very much about it. I think taking the Geralf's Messenger is better because I can't really, like, just as a creature, it's hard to deal with. I don't know. I mean, obviously the Yawgmoth's really good, but they don't have any other like combo pieces with it yet, and the Messenger slows them down. Or I guess what I mean is taking the Messenger will slow them down, like they're not playing anything for a while. So Ragavan's a nice draw here for us. Just because it's 1 mana, we get to put it on the table. Of course, like, I'd love some kind of answer for Yawgmoth or another Thoughtseize. So here's a Bitter Blossom, and it's important to remember that a 2-drop that I could be playing instead is Dathi Voidwalker. And here, Bitter Blossom looks a lot worse than Dathi Voidwalker. But earlier in this league, I won a match where I played Bitter Blossom and they just like conceded to it. And it was a game where I didn't even have double black. And, you know, just like, here's a match where Bitter Blossom was bad and Dathi Voidwalker would be great. And then previously I played a match where Bitter Blossom was great and Dathi Voidwalker would have been pretty bad. So here's Yawgmoth. And, you know, a lot of things we could have had there. Bloodchief's Thirst, Dreadbore, Pulse. I think even Kolaghan's Command would have been pretty solid to hit this Noble Hierarch and then make them discard a card maybe. Like Liliana would have gotten rid of the Hierarch. Made the Cord in their hand much worse at least. But I don't know. I think I'm dead here. kind of learning as I go when I played this match. So. So with Hapatra and Yawgmoth in play, they get to just machine gun down my whole team. And Foxy's a little late. Again, I could have taken Yawgmoth. Tough to know. In that situation, not because it's like that hard of a play to make. It's tough to know just because I don't know how the deck works very well. I think if I had the opportunity again, I would take Yawgmoth and just try to. The thing is that this deck doesn't do very well against just creatures with Undying and Persist or whatever. Gerald's Messenger doesn't kill you outright, but presents a whole different other problem. So it's not like I was thrilled to be given the opportunity to leave that in their hand. Again, like not really having a good understanding of how this matchup works. Probably was supposed to bring in Leyline of the Void. Although it seems like they can, when they are firing on all cylinders, it seems like the Hapatra combo was like definitely enough to get us. The 10 is really good though. It's got like no disruption. Well, kind of has disruption for their combo and Scavenging Ooze. Got Ragavan on the play, or yeah, Ragavan on the play. So they were Wall of Roots, and that's real nice. We get to get Tarmogoyf down. That extra green mana is going to be crucial with Scavenging Ooze later on if they have creatures with Undying. I wouldn't touch a Stomping Ground. I think I was actually supposed to get a Overground Tomb. Not the hugest deal. So, what's nice about this play is that we get to clock them a little bit. The Wall of Roots works really well with Scavenging Ooze for two reasons. One is that it's just extra green mana. But you also get, like, you get to use it twice if you're using, basically, like twice per turn if you get to use the green mana. Have some kind of use for it on your opponent's turn. So like here, we already used the Wall of Roots on our turn, but we get to use it again. And now it's like, I want to, like, our opponent has 3 mana and 1 card in hand. Good enough chance that Yawgmoth is their last card. So I want to get this game over with. So we need to get into a pretty aggressive stance here. So the Bonecrusher Giant lets us do that. Stomp looking really good. We get to take out both of those Strangleroot Geists with the Scavenging Ooze. Now the Ooze is huge, the Tarmogoyf's big. And traded off Ragavan, but that's okay. Opponent scoops him up. Scavenging Ooze looks really good in this matchup. Okay, so now, having seen how this works a little better, it looks like Leyline is going to be good. Also, Liliana the Veil, like, not... I mean, it hits Yawgmoth if that's their only creature, but, like, how often is that going to happen? More often, their only creature is going to be something like Strangleroot Geist or something like that, so... Liliana not looking phenomenal. So we have a hand here that's like, what's nice about playing against a creature combo deck, like something like this, or like, you know, back in the day, Birthing Pod, or Malira, or the Vizier, whatever, is that their deck is based on like putting a bunch of creatures in place. So just normal old removal spells are usually going to be pretty good. They've got mana dorks, they've got creatures that they assemble like a certain, you know, combination of creatures or whatever to win the game with. Well, the problem is that the Undying mechanic is super good against stuff like Bonecrusher Giant and Lightning Bolt. Having said that, like, I think this is still a fine keep. Opponent didn't play anything on turn 1 or 2. Here's a Wall of Roots. Wall of Roots is probably good enough to get a Bloodchief's Thirst, but I really did want to save that Bloodchief's Thirst for a Yawgmoth. Also, we got nailed by a Veil. What can you do? So they used Wall of Roots mana instead of cracking the Verdant Catacombs, which is interesting to me. I don't know what that means. I'm sure somebody who knows this deck better can tell me that there's a reason for that. And so, with Court of Calling in their deck, I don't want to give them time to untap and have Yawgmoth on the battlefield. So now what? Well, Liliana isn't that great here. If they have another Yawgmoth, though, we get to like have this lightning bolt up, which might be useful because it'll hit the Jarl's Messenger. It'll come back with a counter on it. Is that good? I don't even know if that's good. I don't know how this deck works very well. Yawgmoth is too confusing. Good at times I need to bolt this thing, I think. Problem here is that opponent just says go. Is that right? This looks a lot like Court of Calling for Young Wolf to me. Just like saying go. So it looks like pretty easy for me to walk into, yeah, just, okay, well, I'll sacrifice my Young Wolf. Nice Lily activation. Or another Veil of Summer. So I just decided to tick up and play my 2 Bonecrusher Giants. However, Court of Calling for 1 for Young Wolf is what they had. But their last card is Yawgmoth. And so I think... yeah, now they get to just go off, I guess? I think that as long as their life total is higher than mine, which it is, then this is lethal. They have to pay 1 life twice, and then I lose 2 life. So, a tough way to go out, but 4-1, gotta like that. Bonecrusher Giant looked really good. All right, let's check over the deck and wrap it up. All right, so 4-1. Pretty happy with the result. In fact, I think we were like 4-0, 8-0 to start it out. So Jund, old school, old-fashioned Jund, still looking pretty good. I think. I do like the addition of Bonecrusher Giant. I think it's pretty good in this meta game. We didn't run into any Murktide Regents, but if we had, then I think we were doing better than we had been previously. Bitter Blossom, I don't know. This is just a pet card. I like to play Bitter Blossom when I don't know what else to play. But we could possibly want to go up on Scavenging Ooze. They're pretty bad in some matchups, but a lot of the stuff that's going on in this format, Scavenging Ooze is good against. Lurrus, just a lot of different things. Every deck, it seems like, has some sort of graveyard shenanigans going on. So since that's the case, Dauthi Voidwalker starts to look good, but I also kind of like how the mana is pretty smooth here by taking out the Dauthi Voidwalker. Having Dauthi Voidwalker and Wrenn 6 in the same deck, it's fine, but it definitely is a little taxing. It makes you lose some life, and Dauthi Voidwalker isn't good at protecting you. So when your life total is a problem, because you have to play your Dauthi Voidwalker, you might be losing that game because the Voidwalker is not helping you protect your life total very much. So I wouldn't mind seeing a third Scavenging Ooze and then something else instead of a Bitter Blossom, maybe a third Wrenn 6, maybe another Ragavan. Those are the things I would play if I was a millionaire. The 22 lands felt good. The sideboard felt pretty good. What I'm really missing, though, I think, is just like mid-range stuff. Stuff that I can play when I want to take out discard spells. Huntmaster does that, but Crime and Punishment is like only okay, whereas in the past I've played Engineer Explosives, and that's like really good. I used to play I used to be like really into playing like a mid-range mirror kind of sideboard with 7 like knockout cards to take in, and then I would take out all my discard spells. But you can't really do that I think these days, or at least it's tougher to find things that I want in a mirror that I also would just want to have in the sideboard. Huntmaster is my favorite card just to like bring in, just to win a mid-range fight. Outside of that, I don't know. I don't think there's a ton of changes I would want to make, though. Maybe the damping sphere is overkill. Maybe we can afford to take those out. But that's the thing about sideboards. You know, you're never in this format. You're never going to be like, oh wow, I have too much Tron hate or something. Because when you draw it, you're going to be really thankful that you did. So anyway. Yeah, pretty good showing for Jund. Pretty excited about this deck. Also excited about Historic Jumpstart. Should be coming out, I don't know, I think they delayed the release or something, but should be coming out pretty soon. So, Seasoned Pyromancer might make an appearance in Historic Jund. That'll be really fun. So, I'll be probably doing videos and blogging and streaming for that. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.